Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. I don't know, but if she comes, she'll get here. I'd like to welcome you all to the April meeting of the Economic Development Authority. Mr. Moore, can you do the roll call?
Yes, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mr. Hines.
Present.
Mr. Kovacic. Ms. Link. Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Revel.
Present.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum.
Okay. So our first item, we're going to go right into closed meeting this morning. Mr. Hines, can you read our the item to take us into closed session?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.3 for the purpose of discussion, the acquisition and/or disposition of real property where a discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body, specifically regarding the Victory Crossing area.
Second.
All right. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
We're in closed session. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Link.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries. We're in open session.
Okay.
And then we'll need to do, we need to take a vote on that resolution.
So you should have the resolution before you. Can I hear a motion?
Move for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Link.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. We'll move forward with acquisition.
Okay, so I guess we can proceed forward with the minutes from the March meeting. You should have those before you. Do I hear any additions or corrections?
Move adoption of the minutes as presented.
And Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Link. Yes. Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And on to the financials.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
As of March 31st, total cash and investment were $2,453,194. The increase in cash and temporary investment is mainly due to the $1,026,349 from the escrow account related to the breeding project. The total current assets were $316,082. Capital asset total $1,205,661. Other asset, including property held for resale, totaled $15,919,575. Total assets were $19,894,512. Total liability was $5,131,311. This is related to the short-term note, about $5.1 million. Net position at March 31st totaled $14,762,900. Operating expense for the month of March totaled $4,498. Non-operating income totaled $20,833. Non-operating expense, excluding the transfer to the city, totaled $25,455. This is related to the local incentive grant payment. Any question you have regarding the March statement?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just had a couple of questions regarding the some of the older grants that we have sent out there in terms of the facade improvement grant program. Some of them are from October and November's, if it's at all possible, and if the city manager agrees, if we could just have a short report back as to like some of the mop-up activities of these remaining grants that are just kind of out there for the last 6 or 7 months. Just a quick overview
Where they are.
for the May meeting.
We can provide that.
Yeah,
Finance will work with Mr. Moore to provide that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns on the financials?
I move that we go ahead and file them for audit.
We don't need to.
No, we don't need to vote on it.
We don't need that.
Old business. So we have the budget. Does everyone have a copy of the budget? And Mr. Hines is going to present it for us because the budget is not good today.
I'm not sure how I drew that short straw, but okay. Good morning again, Commissioners. Hope you have an opportunity to review the proposed budget that was sent out. Mr. Kovacic and I, along with staff, presented or got together and discussed staff's requests, recommendations, things of that nature for the operating budget for the fiscal year 2020. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and go line by line here, but there are a number of things that we probably should just highlight upon for the fact that there's some notable changes due to increased properties that we've since taken on, some process improvements that may have been recommended by the staff, and then the capturing of costs that we anticipate having. I do want to put it out there that this is one of the largest budgets we've had since I've been on this authority. So I think it's prudent for us to go through this, naturally, I guess, ask questions. You know, I don't mind you interrupting me if you have questions as I go through these to kind of give you just an idea of where we went there. So we'll talk just real quick on the revenues. Naturally, the 125 is a set revenue deal. We did anticipate $250,000 in potential sale of property. We hope that number to be north of that, but I believe we do have a piece of property that we do anticipate closing in this next fiscal year. That is approximately at that $250,000. And Robert, if you want to elaborate, update, whatever, feel free to jump in as well.
Yes, where we are is you may have seen the property at McLean Street, and we anticipate closing during the next fiscal year. We are continuing to work with them. That is the Ryan Homes property and the Miller Group property. So we are continuing to work with them on that process. So we put that amount in there. There were some adjustments that needed to be made from a wetland standpoint, but we won't bore you with that this morning. But we anticipate that would be the sold property. We do also anticipate, I don't want to leave out that we do anticipate hopefully selling Victory Village, but I don't want to get your hopes up about that just yet.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later at another point.
Yeah.
All right, we did actually have a cost of land sold increase. That's a pretty substantial increase. Again, we're hoping and anticipating some properties being sold. So naturally, that cost of selling the land has gone up significantly. Auditing fees, small increase. Naturally, that's pretty much keeping up with the consumer price index. Business development is going up to the 55,000. This is in capturing with the office space. The EDA is currently the economic development office is in. I believe that was the contract that was signed did have some escalation involved in that, so that captures the escalation cost.
Responsible for that every year from this moving forward?
As your chair, when we went into this arrangement, and please, Madam City Manager, Mr. Moore, if I am in not remembering this correctly, but my understanding was when we were brought this opportunity we were discussing the EDA actually taking on this at one point. We started kind of discussing what we all felt comfortable with as a group, and we kind of landed at something different than what the landlord wanted. Staff went back and started talking with the landlord, and then we as a group kind of were then asked to take on the first year of this involvement, and then to ask our partners with the PRHA to PPIC, thank you for that. And then, long story short there is that I believe the budget for the PPIC has now been set. They had some additional investments that they needed to take for the city. And then at that point, it turned out that we were being asked that we were going to take on this for 1 year, and then that the budget for the entire city would actually encompass the department. Now, I don't know if that took place, if it didn't, if it did, not exactly sure. But my understanding was that it was going to be looked at on a year-by-year basis for our involvement. But it was my understanding as the chairman and bringing these things to you as when I was there 2 years ago, was that the city would pick up for their department from that point. But again, I'm not sure if that got captured in the fiscal year 20's cost from the city manager. And maybe this is where I could defer to you to answer that question.
I'm going to ask, as everyone knows, there are 59 budgets, 60 budgets that make up the municipal budget. I can't remember every line or everything, but each department submits a budget. You are correct in your review of how a year ago or close to a year ago we decided to move out of City Hall back over into the Town Bank building. Mr. Moore, did you collect that in?
We did not collect that in the budget.
And what is it, 41?
It's 54,000 and some change. That's why we did 55.
We have time to look at that, so that's not an issue.
Right.
So we will, budget team meets every day, so we will get back with Mr. Moore.
And what we did was we anticipated having the PPIC split the cost with the group. However, we did have, PPIC is different from you all from a standpoint of buying and selling of properties. They did step forward with the $180,000 for preferred freezer, so that, and we'll talk about that later on in the meeting, but then that skewed some numbers from that standpoint. We do anticipate them selling property, however, come November, to allow them to contribute next year. But that 180,000 skewed that budget. That is why we asked this year for that, for you all to fund this fully. But certainly, as the manager stated, we can look at the budget and adjust the budget accordingly, or the manager can adjust the budget so we can take it out of staff budget.
And maybe that's a report back item before we take our next, we have a whole month before to work through some of these little hiccups there. Okay, let's move on to the next item there. We're looking at for economic development grants. We do have a $35,000 line item there that was originally set up for the Portsmouth Heritage Initiative with the Stones, and $10,000 that was set up for the ports events. But we didn't pay that out in its entirety. I believe we paid it in $5,000 and another $5,000 increment. So we are slightly, there's additional fundings for grants that should Robert and his staff feel that we need to have a grant that doesn't necessarily fit into the local incentive program. We would have some flexibility there. No real changes throughout the rest of the document until we get into line 29. We are still probably, you're going to keep our budget for legal at $100,000. Hopefully we don't have to spend that, but it's going to be there in the case that we have any issues come up that we need Attorney Ashby and their group to help us out with. 521905 contractual other. This is
I'm sorry, you said on line 29,
29, what you go,
page 1?
page 1, yes, sir. If you go down to where it says development properties,
Yeah.
properties held for
Yeah, I
resale.
see that. I don't see the 100,000 in.
There, you're going to go down one
Legal,
step down
to
underneath
legal.
that, I'm sorry.
All right, I see it.
So it actually would be line 30. Okay. So the 100,000 for the legal there, when we actually did have an expenditure of 122,000, we're anticipating that number to go down even further than the 100,000 hopefully this year. But we wanted to make sure we captured as much of what we think our expenditures are going to be. Contractual other, which is, this is the line item that captures the cost associated with Victory Village, or for the majority of this line item. It's for the surveys, making the site ready, getting those things together, ready for resale. 522-135, significant increase. This is capturing the cost of grounds for Victory Village and the PRHA properties that we just took in. So there's a significant increase there of about $80,000. One thing we did add to the budget a line item of maintenance other, which is about 10% of the entire ground cost. The reason why we did that was staff was reporting that we had some issues with people dumping things on the properties, tires, et cetera, that had we just kept the contractual cost of cutting the grass and hitting that every single time, we would actually end up short at the end of the fiscal year. So we do need to have some funds there that are outside of the scope of the grass cutting contract to cover those costs, and especially when you add the size of Victory Village there. We're probably going to have quite a few of those things. Hopefully everybody is nice and not dropping a whole bunch of stuff in there, but reality says it's going to happen. So we did 10% of the entire budget for that. Interest expense, which is our debt service, interest on the Victory Village property, that's that's the bond payment, yes, sir. And that's the interest only payment there. We did see a slight increase in utilities, so that's capturing the additional utilities costs for the Victory Village property. We did remain, when we go to operating income, starting at line 49, you see that we did hold the local incentives program, that program in place for yet another year. Anticipating investment income, naturally, that's kind of a guess. We think that's going to be real close to that, that's $7,500. And then the 125, which is our transfer from the income at the very front of the page, which is for the lease for the Renaissance Hotel that goes to the city. That being said, there's a lot of research that went into getting some of this information for Victory Village, and I want to thank staff for assisting us in getting that together. That being said, again, we do have some revenues there, for some expenditures that we really need to make sure we hopefully get some revenues. And wink, wink, Mr. Moore.
No
sell,
pressure.
sell.
No pressure.
No pressure. But it does encapsulate what we believe our cost is going to be. I do want to also throw this out there because there was a certain amount of concern, I think, from Mr. Kovacic, myself, and even staff, that we're taking on a big piece of property, and there's going to be things that over these next 12 months we're going to have to be flexible with. And I know the cash position has been a concern of this group for some time. It still remains to be a concern of this group, but I do want to make sure that we understand that that's our biggest piece of investment property we have, and there's going to be surprises probably that are going to pop up. The $14,000 may not cover it if somebody goes out there and drops 3,000 tires out in the middle of Victory Village or whatnot. You don't know that. This is a shall we say, a document that always needs to be evolving based on the needs and funding being moved around to necessarily into the correct pots. So it was our best guess, considering that we're adding 35 acres, now 38 acres, and if I have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer any of those for the group.
Questions, concerns?
So based on the budget based on our financials, our cash position now is what? Based on
Was it 2.?
2.4?
It's 2.4.
And we're budgeting a loss of 400,000 this year.
We are budgeting a significant loss, yes.
Roughly.
It's 460-something thousand.
Right.
Yes.
So we will vote on, yeah. We will
Well,
vote on this at
and
the
if I,
meeting.
and if I could just, and, you know, maybe provide a little bit of, you know, context to what you're saying about the budgeting a loss. We have budgeted a loss as a group since I've been on this commission. It's normal for us to budget a loss. It is a much larger loss than we've ever budgeted for, though, this time. And I think part of that is we are doing some pretty bold things right now, and that is kind of scary, but it also is kind of necessary. Luckily, you know, we are still in a position that we can do this, but we may want to, again, as Dr. Patton says, reflect and refocus, you know, our budget and review our expenditures
And reimagine.
and reimagine, which I've lost the fourth R. And
Fifth R.
oh, 5 R's now.
Right.
How many more R's? You're going to start running out of R's here soon.
Reimagine.
Okay, so in her budget message, that's a very similar thing I would encourage us to look at. I myself, as a commissioner, hold a vote in this. I'm not going to share my personal feelings about where I'm going to go in a month on this, but my job is, as a committee member, is to bring forth the staff recommendation. It's not to bring it with any bias. And my feeling is, taking off my presenter hat and my other hat, is maybe we need to look at, you know, my feeling on this was a local incentive program. We have long since talked about, you know, how we can tighten that ship up. You know, there's a number of ways, if you feel uncomfortable with that number, to bring that number down if this is the will of that group. I would encourage you to let us, you know, your committee members and staff know where we're feeling, and I will certainly be reaching out to you myself as a member of the ad hoc committee to see where you stand on what we've presented. Okay.
Might want to add the 6th R, ROI.
Yeah, that'll be the 7th R.
There goes another.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I'll write it down.
That's the way I was thinking. I'm like, if we're going in the hole 400,000, and I know, you know, you got some bold ideas moving forward, but I'm hoping that that's going to easily be recovered.
It is.
Or that we have some projection on when it will be recovered and what it looks like. That's what I had in here. That's kind of what I have some angst about this huge undertaking, if we're not going to be able to reflect that return on investment to the bottom line. I mean, I know in my life, I projected $400,000 loss.
Right.
I better have some ROI down the road that I can easily see. Otherwise, I'm out of business. So that's kind of what I'd like to talk about. Maybe not today, but when we get ready to approve this budget, what your vision is, because I think that budget is a reflection of the vision that the commissioners have and the belief that the staff is asking for. We'd like to be on the same page, so I'd like to kind of understand that, if that's possible.
We will certainly address that question. The line that we have in economic development, as we discussed at the retreat, is that there's a certain level of confidentiality with things that we are doing. I can tell you that within the next, I'd say, 60 days, we would have an opportunity to sit down and talk about where we are, because by that time VHB should have all of the layouts and the anticipated numbers associated with the proposed uses on the property. That's in hand. That would be what you have paid for and what you have asked for. But where we are from a project standpoint, that would still be a proposal. But I think that will give you some more comfort. But I will tell you that our plan is in the next 12 months that you will see significant changes. And I think to this point, we have been true as a staff to what we have said we were going to do, and we will continue to be that way. So, Dr. Pat.
I was just thinking about what Mr. Hines said, and I'm thinking back to September 15th, 2015, when I first attended the meetings here for the EDA. And you can remember there was little synergy or energy or projects or whatever. We were kind of just dealing with this little one, and there was not much more. But now we look 4 years later at, as Mr. Moore said, just to me the other day, that their office cannot answer enough phone calls and messages that are coming not only from the region but across the country. The sale is exploding, and where we wanted to get that out there and have people to really look at Portsmouth properties. People are looking at Portsmouth properties from across the world. The numbers that are hitting that every day, which Mr. Jones, who worked with Mr. Garcia and Mr. Moore, who was a part of that, Mr. Garcia said once this hits, it's going to be unlimited of what it's going to bring of interest to a city. And so, yes, Mr. Scott, you will see over the next, as he said.
I try to sneak out of you.
No, I looked at, no, you will see where you're going to be very comfortable with what's going to be coming and how that is going to be, that gap is going to be filled. We're confident in that.
Anything else on the budget?
So you all will vote in May.
We anticipate a vote in May, and again, I will reach out to each one of the commissioners if they have a chance to kind of digest what's been presented and to bring, maybe capture their thoughts, concerns, and then maybe if it's agreeable to Mr. Moore and the city manager, we can maybe have one more wrap-up budget meeting before before the May vote to capture all those concerns and comments.
Sir.
And then maybe also you, at that point, be able to have a report back regarding the office space situation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, thank you for your help in putting this together. You and Mr. Donahue will be helpful.
And thank you and Mr. Kowalczyk for your hard work on this. Appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
Lee Ogilvy was definitely tremendous, as well as finance staff with sitting down and making sure that this was in place and in order. So Ms. Hu and I think Cassie is sitting back there. Thank you very much for all that you do for this board and for our office. So that kind of segues, if we will, Chair, to the next item, which is a budget amendment. So while we have proposed, as Mr. Scott would say, a loss, we are at a loss because we have spent more money on grounds maintenance. And with the acquisition of new properties from PRHA, we will need to make a budget amendment to cover a couple different things. One, the ground maintenance for the new properties, but we also need to anticipate the amount of insurance to cover these some of these properties as well. I can tell you specifically that the cost to carry the EDA through the end of the fiscal year is a little over $20,000, $20,136 for grounds maintenance. That's including the additional Victory Village. That is also including some cleanup that is needed at 1130 High Street. That is a property that will be demolished, but once it's demolished, you still need to make sure it's maintained and debris and things of that nature. I would add to that and propose to add to that at least an additional $5,000 for insurance costs. We do not know what that number is. Being that we have such a large amount of property coming, I really would say I would ask that the budget amendment go to about $30,000, not to exceed if at all possible, because we do not know what that cost is. We are awaiting a information from town insurance. We just don't know. We don't have that as of this meeting. We should have it in May. We could, and maybe this is a suggestion, do one amendment now, just for the grounds maintenance. We have that cost. We know what that is. And then potentially in May, once we know what the insurance information is, we can go there. But I leave that up to the board.
Madam Chair. My feeling is maybe we go ahead and give the budget amendment not to exceed the $30,000 with a staff report back in May.
Not a problem.
And I'd like to make that motion to amend the budget and the line items for ground and maintenance and property insurance to a not to exceed $30,000 with a May report back of the actual cost and expenditures.
Second.
Any discussion? Any further discussion on that?
All right. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Link?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
All right, motion carries, and we'll do a report back in May.
All right. Mr. Donahue, we have a FIG application for 1140 London Boulevard.
Good morning. You do have two local incentive program applications before you for consideration today. The first is from the applicant at 1140 London Boulevard. That is the quarters at Parkview LLC. It's a multifamily community at the intersection of Elm Avenue and London Boulevard. The applicant has submitted a grant request for funding assistance to install 4 6-foot decorative metal gates at the entrances to the community. You'll see on the overhead the property location there again at London and Elm Avenue. This is a site layout for the property. They have 4 separate entrances. They are proposing to install manual entry gates for controlled access at certain periods of time at each of those entrances. These are some photos which were included in your package on Friday showing those entrances that they are proposing to install the gates at. They have existing columns. They're able to support gates being mounted directly to them at each entryway. The total request for grant assistance is $11,464.35 to be precise, and that represents 50% of their total project cost and also includes a contingency allowance of 15%. Certainly answer any questions you may have. Do want to recognize that Mr. Dan Aston, principal with the Whitmore Companies and owner of the quarters at Parkview, is here with us this morning as well. I'm sure he can answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions? Mr. Hines?
Sorry for being so vocal on this, and by the way, thank you for your investment in our city. We appreciate that, Mr. Aston. My question is one of which, are we tiptoeing on the side of facade improvement versus site security? Is this more of a security issue, or is this more of a making an already beautiful place even better, or are we looking to provide more security for this property? I don't know where we're going with that. I guess that's my question. I know it looks more decorative in the picture there, but there's really not a true site visual there of what this is going to look like. And it's a good question.
That's what it looks like to me. Security.
It is security. It's not. I don't understand how this even fits in the facade improvement grant. So I'm confused as to what the purposes of this facade improvement is if we're gonna grant it for getting gates on an apartment complex. With all due respect, it makes sense to me.
A manual gate at that is definitely security.
I don't understand what your confusion is. I'm not confused.
Well, no, I mean, I guess the question, I guess maybe that's the polite way of asking the question, is this, and I mean, I think I'd like to hear maybe from the owner's perspective on this, if it's okay with the chair
Absolutely.
to maybe hear? I mean,
Mr. Aston?
And your question is, what's the difference between facade and security, I guess? Or?
well, no, I mean, is this more intended for a beautification, or is this more intended for security? Or is it intended for both, sir?
It's intended to improve the property, is what it's intended for. So that we can offer, you know, a better living experience for the people who choose to live in Portsmouth at this property. That's the purpose of it.
Could you go back to the aerial, please? So are we looking to encompass the entirety of the whole?
So let me flip
complex?
back to the site layout. You'll note there are 4 entrances, and they have identified the location of the gates. You have a current entrance on London. There would be a gate going in there. That's entry 1. There are 2 points of entry on Elm Avenue. They're noted on the exhibit as 2 and 3. And then Enterprise Way is the 4th location.
Does staff have a recommendation on this?
Oh, they already the recommendations in?
Maybe
Madam Chair.
the best way to, you know, when we look at the facade, I mean, the Genesis facade is face. So the face of this property is to offer a sense of, you know, and you talk about security. So we've worked with the city manager's office, with the police department, and others. We've had a lot of crime problems here, and it's threatened the population of this property. And so we thought, okay, this isn't a, you know, security would be to put up 4 gates that nobody can get in and everybody has to buzz in. We want to create a facade that has the appearance of maybe some additional security and to limit all the access points to the property, because we had probably too many, and we've had, you know, like I say, some serious crime problems here that probably are not well publicized, but certainly got our attention. And that's when we reached out to the manager's office. We had a big meeting with everyone last year, and this was one of the thought processes that came up because of it, because quite frankly, we had commanders from the Navy and the Coast Guard telling us, you either fix this or we're telling everybody to move out. And so we're trying to respond to what we deem to be a, you know, a larger problem. So.
And the reason why I'm asking this is not necessarily to say no to this. My question is we want to stay within the confines of an already established grant and grant guidelines. Where maybe this may not fit this particular program, maybe it fits into another, you know, spot that we can assist an investor in our city. But I would just feel that maybe on this particular program, we're tiptoeing on somewhere that we may set a precedent, you know, of when it comes to the facade improvement grant. That's where I'm concerned. Did we review this against our established guidelines as well? And
So-
Right here.
well, I saw that, but
So
it's-
staff reviewed it, and we looked at it from both scenarios. Staff has to bring this to the board because staff does not have administrative approval for anything over this amount. They have to bring it to the board for the vote. Also, if we were to say no, they could still have the right to come before the board and ask for this approval. We looked at it as initially that question came up of security, and is this a security gate? If this were, eventually staff came to the point that if this were something where there was a key fob to get in and the access was restricted by a key fob, then yes, you would lean more towards the security aspect. Not saying it is or is not. What I'm saying is this is the basis that we utilize. But something that could remain closed and would essentially match the gates that are out there now, the decorative fencing that is out there now, that would be a decorative fence. And then now again, it's all in, we leave it up to the board for that approval. But depending on which way you look at it, you are correct. It could be to security, it could be a decorative fence that closes off the rest of the property. Because you have accesses that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Donnie or Mr. Aston, you have certain parts of the property that will be closed. It will be a decorative fence all the way across.
Will there be accessibility at these locations, each one of the ones? Or how do you plan on allowing this your residents in? Are they going to be like
Well,
buzzed in? Are they going to be?
There's a pedestrian gate at every entrance, all right? Two of the gates will remain open all the time. All the gates will be manual. And the idea is just really to redirect traffic, if you will, and to create this facade, you know, that pushes people to different entry points. So.
Can I kind of help out here? By not installing the key fob access, it really isn't a security control issue, and keeping 2 gates open at the same time. You know, when you do a security plan for a facility such as this, you want to direct traffic, and with 4 accesses open and create a safe environment. And with 4 accesses open, I can imagine you have experienced a substantial amount of issues. We'll just leave it at that. I think that the idea that the gates will add, it looks relatively unfinished from a facade aspect, but by not installing any kind of key access, it does in fact meet the test of facade improvement.
Well, I mean, and again, I'm just trying to get to an answer.
And this
as
is
a
one
law,
place I'm actually
right.
kind of an expert.
I'm going to say you're as a.
And that was the thought of staff. There's not an access that only the individuals who live there will control.
The idea that they can actually secure all 4 gates in any kind of event is an added benefit, but from a security perspective, it doesn't really meet the test. By keeping 2 gates open at all times and keeping 2 locked at all times, my only concern at all with this plan in general is access to the fire department if somebody needs to come in through that back way and things like that. And I did see the lockbox, but just making sure that people have access to that lockbox in order for emergency services to do their job. But otherwise, yeah, I think the gates look relatively unfinished. Putting gates in place makes it a facade improvement. And not necessarily a security endeavor. And I have lots of recommendations if you want a security endeavor. So, but no, I think it meets the qualifications and criteria.
And I disagree. I think it's the appearance of security is what this is doing, the appearance. That's it. And you just described security element of it, all of it.
Actually, locking 2 gates creates a bigger security risk. If you can go back, do we have a picture of the actual gates or the access points that we're talking about? No. Yeah. Let's see.
Your
We have
whole
a better
conversation
picture
is
of
security.
Where the gates, see, it looks relatively unfinished to me. If you look closely, the sides of the gates, it looks like there's supposed to be gates installed and they just aren't. And that, to me, is what meets the test of it, so.
Yeah, and I still disagree. I understand what you're saying, but it's the appearance. And your whole dialogue is security.
Right. But that would not be a generally acceptable practice for security to be system to be installed there.
The appearance.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is something I've wrestled with since I saw the packet. If it be the will of the body, I would like to have a little bit extra time to review this and reflect on this, and if we could possibly table this item until the next meeting, so I can really kind of come to grips with what I would like my vote to be. If it's the will of the body, I'd like to put this
I guess we would need to vote on that. If we want
to delay this until the May meeting, to where we can maybe have a better thought. Yes, that is my motion. I move that we do that, to table it to the May meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, so we're voting to table this until the May meeting.
Yes, sir.
All right. So then that was a motion by Hines, second by Link. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Link?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
No.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
So that failed. So
So now we're considering, I mean, I just don't see where thinking about this for a month is going to settle this issue. So I'm ready to.
Is either a motion on the floor or not? I move that we close discussion on the item.
I move for denial.
is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Yes, yes.
Do I hear a second? Second.
I'll go ahead and call for a second so we can at least put the item before us.
So,
So that's second.
Yeah, I'll second it.
So this is for denial of the application.
That's correct.
Mr. Hines?
No.
Ms. Link?
No?
Ms. Revel?
No.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, so that didn't work.
That motion failed.
That motion failed.
So
So now can I hear a motion to approve? I will entertain a motion to approve.
I will motion to approve this facade improvement grant.
I need a second.
I'll go ahead and make the second.
All right. All right, this is to approve 1140.
Okay.
Mr. Hines?
No.
Ms. Link?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Okay, so that failed.
Motion to reconsider my 1 month to revisit this in May.
Already defeated the project.
can always bring it back
Oh,
if
you
you
can
want
always
to.
bring it back, okay.
Can we bring it, can we have a bring back in May? I would move that we bring this item back in May when we've had an opportunity to discuss with staff, allow staff to question the applicant, get some clarity, get some understanding of what we're wanting.
Is that not
Can
a
I
table?
inject something here?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So there's a security philosophy called CEPTEC, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. The proposed improvement was truly just an idea of security. It wasn't actual security. And the idea that an improvement to a structure of property or anything that we do to the front of a building, to an entire property, it can have, crime prevention through environmental design incorporates public art and things of that nature, things that create celebrated entryways, which I believe is part of what this might actually do, but with 2 gates, it's kind of hard to say. But that's what I mean. This doesn't meet the test of anything other than making it look like a gated community when people drive in, to give them that feeling of comfort when they come in and they explore one of these apartments. It's not actually meeting the test of security, which is why I say it really is. And just because somebody feels more comfortable because they see a gate, even if the gate's never closed, that doesn't necessarily take it off of the running that it makes it a prettier place. Those pillars look unfinished and they look like they need them. So I will say enough.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may. I was really hoping to have Mr. Miller here to ask this question, but I'll go ahead and I'll ask Ms. Assistant City Attorney. Since Mr. Miller's been a part of every facade improvement grant deal and he knows what the intent of this group has been, in the definition of our policy, is this a prohibited action according to our policy? Now, and the reason why I'm asking that is that on page 3 of 9, there is a prohibited improvement of security systems, but it does not go as far as to saying including fencing. It does not go, but it, does this fall within our listed bulleted points of being okay? Is the question that I have for my legal team, or person, shall I say, at this point.
Chair, point of order. We've already voted on this matter. If
Madam-
we move on in the agenda, if folks want to revisit this at some other time, I think we voted on this matter. I'm going to ask for a point of order and ask us to move on with the agenda.
And I agree.
Madam Chair, in all respect to Mr. Scott's point of order, my vote hinges on staying within the confines of our policy.
But I think if you have a motion to present, let's present a motion. What is occurring now is further discussion on something that's already been defeated. So if you have a further motion that you would like us to consider, is that not correct, Mr. Scott?
I just don't know what we're having a committee meeting here now
Right.
this now is delved into a committee meeting on the policy.
So if you have a motion to present.
We had a motion, we voted on it, it failed. It's time to move on to the next agenda item. If folks want to,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm scared to death right now because I've never seen us spend this much time on one motion that failed. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm ready to move on.
I'm requesting legal opinion at this point, and that's the reason why we have a lawyer here to interpret our
opinion on something that we already voted on.
Right. I think this is issues dead. We've had like 3 motions here, 4 maybe, and this totally out of order to just continue to filibuster and try to go different directions.
Madam Chair is the chair. If she wants to continue to entertain this, I guess we can continue to entertain
The only
it.
way that I would entertain this is if you have a motion that you would like to present to the group to reconsider in May, or something to that effect.
Madam Chair, I would like for us to, like a motion for us to reconsider after a policy review of this application in May.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Link?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Okay, motion carries, so this will be
We reconsider in May.
May.
Okay,
Then
thank
we'll
you.
move on with the agenda.
Reconsider on the reconsider.
So, Mr. Donahue, next.
The next application before you is an interior build-out grant for 355 Broad Street. That's in the Port Norfolk community. The applicant is 355 Broad Street LLC. Mr. Evan Harrell is the property owner. Mr. Harrell has joined us here at this morning's meeting. He is in the process of, excuse me, renovating the building. You may recall that he was before you this past summer, I believe in July, for a facade improvement application where he was doing some exterior work to the property. He did not fully utilize that grant due to some timing issues that he ran into, but he is now before you with a request for grant assistance on the interior of the property. Mr. Harrell operates a sailmaking and repair and sales business and is looking to utilize the property for his business. We received his application for the interior work in March. It is going to total $26,000. Essentially, he's looking to double and expand the interior space. The photos you're seeing here are the front half of the ground floor suite there. He is looking at making some structural improvements to the back half of the property so he can fully utilize the space. You will see here in the photos, it's somewhat hard to make out because of the lighting, but there are some damaged floor joists, ceiling joists, and interior walls that need repair and replacement. And that is what the grant is requested to fund. Again, the total cost of the work is $26,000. We are recommending approval of a grant in the amount of $14,950, which takes into account that 15% contingency allowance should it be necessary there. I can answer any questions you may have.
Hearing no questions, do I hear a motion to approve or deny?
Move adoption of the grant as presented.
Second.
All right, this is for approval of the application. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Link?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right. I guess to end the meeting on a couple notes, something that is not on your agenda, but wanted to make you all aware of. We just received the information. The VITA conference is coming. May the 22nd and the 23rd. And I think certainly everyone at this table has either been or had the opportunity to attend this meeting. It's 2 days. Staff suggestion would be that Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Kovacic have the opportunity to attend that. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And we will make them aware of it as well so that they know about it and have that.
Extremely
have
valuable.
that. The VITA, so you have not attended the VITA either. It's
Very helpful.
Yes, and it's an event.
The one you told me about.
Yeah. So we certainly would suggest that any commissioner who has not attended should attend. So again,
Just got
maybe I
me.
think we sent two.
Oh, you have been.
I think we sent two at a time. And it's really for new members of the board, of the EDA boards. I think we've also sent PPIC so that they understand the roles that you all play in economic development and in the overall economy of the city. Very insightful. Everyone that has gone has come back and talked about how much they've learned and better understand their position on the board. So we will pass that information to Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Smith, you have not attended? Okay.
Where is it being held?
This is in Richmond. I think originally it was in Roanoke at one point and Harrisonburg another time.
We went three.
Charlottesville.
It was in Charlottesville,
Yeah.
I believe.
So it moves around.
I think we went 3 years ago, and I'll tell you this just as an aside to kind of talk about the value of that. Mr. Scott and I and Ms. Revel actually I think joined us as well. This was where we first got introduced to the idea of site evaluation. And brought that piece back to us, and everything from that point has kind of focused in from this group of a site evaluation and what do we have to do to have things ground ready and ready to be developed. I'm certain that just about every time they come back, somebody comes back, is going to come back with a great idea. So I would encourage the new commissioners, and if you haven't gone, that it's certainly a worthwhile measure, and we do have it in our budget to do
I
so.
would think the chair needs to go as often as possible.
I think I would suggest that too.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense for the chair not to go.
So the registration fee is $425. The deadline is May 8th. So we would need to move somewhat quickly.
Per person?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, per person.
We do have the dollars.
2 days.
We do have your dollars
I was about to
budgeted.
give 20 grand away for
We're
those
okay.
breakfasts.
See, now that's
Yeah,
2
that's
days.
2 days.
Breakfast is a
2
running.
breakfasts, lunch
I was
services,
about to give you
lunches.
20 grand away for a gate.
Reception, the
That's
course
chump change.
and
Give it, go ahead. Chump change. Y'all putting up gates for apartment owners.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to comment, the 3 years ago when you all attended and you came back, we were just in the beginning stages of working with PRJ to get the properties that were out there from CDBG, which we finally all returned. But when we returned, before the properties were returned, Mr. Moore and his team, as a result of you all going, were able to tier the properties for council and make sure we were in compliance with what the new process was across the nation for evaluating properties. So it was very, very helpful, and something that we will continue to use for years and years ahead.
Yes. So
We weren't tiering properties.
we'll send out the information to all the commissioners and that have not attended and that would like to attend. But again, the registration is the 8th. The hotel deadline is the 1st, so we will send that out today. Next thing we want to talk about is you have in front of you today what you should have had in front of you at the State of the City, which is our annual report. The annual report is short, sweet, and to the point. Basically, we're a smart city that is a wise choice, and we had a great year last year. $104 million in new revenue. We affected 1,123 jobs, so 300 of those were brand new. We saved 823 jobs via expansions. Also in your package, you should have some tickets from us to the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, the 67th annual tournament, which starts this Wednesday. You have tickets to the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday game. We are sponsors. The Portsmouth Economic Development Office is a sponsor. So we certainly want to show our gratitude for the work that you all have done over the last 12 months. And then finally, we wanted to talk about, give you a brief update. Some of you all were able to attend, but the 5th, so about a little over a week ago, the mayor had his State of the City, but prior to that, Governor Northam was here to announce what we found out to be was the largest deal since the Maersk deal in 2007, 2008, and that is the expansion of Preferred Freezer. They are a cold, C-O-L-D, storage company out of New York by way of Chesapeake. They have a facility in Chesapeake. It's about 180,000 square feet. They will expand into Portsmouth with a 213,000 square foot facility. That's a $60 million investment, and thereby creating 60 new jobs with an average salary of $50,000. That's a great win for us as we beat out 9 other localities. The final 2 were ourselves and Savannah, Georgia. I even received emails from some of the folks down in Savannah and the surrounding counties congratulating us on that win. That was a big deal. So they will take down the former BASF property, or the old Virginia Chemical, however you refer to it. They will take down that 40 acres and have about 15 to 20 acres will be the facility itself. So you're looking at, again, 213,000 square feet, about 65-foot clear on the inside, so almost 6 stories. And they have an aggressive timeline to be open by June of 2020. So we are working with our partners in the planning department and the zoning department and permitting to work through that process as diligently as possible to make that happen. So we just wanted to end on that note, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any comments from.
What's the ROI on that, since Councilman Moody mentioned that? What's the ROI on that project?
Yes.
So the ROI is going to be several $1 million annually with potential for expansion. Again, if you heard, they are taking about 15 to 20 acres, which would be for the new facility itself with some other expansion opportunities later. But you're talking a primarily automated facility. So you're looking at machinery and tools. You're looking at some of everything. The exact numbers, we are still working out those so everyone knows, but it will be several $1 million.
And you got 60 new jobs.
And you have 60 new jobs. And that's an average of $50,000. You have everyone from technicians to chemists to engineers, everything in this facility.
Dr. Pat?
And just we're talking ROI. Just yesterday, talking about the company that's dealing with the oils.
Oh,
I don't want to say the word, but the oils.
Yes, it's the CDBG. Not CDB.
Right.
CBD.
Right, and yesterday in a conversation, just looking at the number of jobs that's going to bring.
That's another 45.
Chemists, scientists, pharmacists, nurses. I mean, and
Samplers.
I don't think they had
You'll have samples.
I don't think they had a position there, Mr.
No, you cannot have pockets on your clothes if you're working.
Right.
Right, you cannot.
No pockets.
But those are just some of the ROIs
Yeah.
that we're.
That's a 65,000 square foot facility.
Yeah.
That is proposed to be open in November. Again, working with our partners on the 4th floor.
And then yesterday, I learned that the legislature is considering and working with Carolina, and because right now it can only be Virginia purchased, but because we're so close to North Carolina, that there is already conversation with the state and the state of Virginia for people to be able to come across the line. And we're so close.
Can I make one announcement just of interest maybe to the members? I don't know if you're aware, the VDOT is studying the Bowers Hill interchange. For those people who aware of how important that area of that spaghetti of transportation network is. They're having a public comment open house on May the 9th from 5 to 7 at Jolliffe Middle School. If you go on their webpage, virginiadot.org, and look up the studies, You'll see the different descriptions of the scenarios they're studying. They've got animations to go with it, are pretty fascinating to watch. So it might be worth your while. You can also fill out a survey online, participate through a virtual meeting as well. But pretty significant road project that they get to what they're showing there. So I just want to point that out if you're interested in looking at that.
Councilman New.
I can't leave without expressing an opinion, and I didn't want to jump in on the discussion since a motion had already been put on the floor. One word, when you come back in May to discuss the facade request, a conversation centered on security. Think of one word, a barrier, when you reconsider that. A gate, a fence, or barriers. And I don't think a facade, I don't think a barrier really fits the description of a facade. So, and two, you are establishing a precedent, as Don had mentioned. So if that's the case, I'm sure we have a lot of businesses that would love to have a fence and a gate as part of their facility. So get ready to open the checkbook.
Yes.
And again, I thank you everybody for, I just want to thank everybody for having a lively conversation regarding that, and we can disagree agreeably. So I just want to thank for us to have that synergy, that we are allowed to do that. And thank you for everybody being, I say, well-behaved even when we disagreed with each other on that. So thank you. It's very rare that we disagree.
Discussion without being disagreeable.
Exactly.
I'd like to recognize the assessor for just a minute.
I just need those spreadsheets back.
Oh, the
take that.
Discussion item.
Oh, man,
It's already been bestowed.
that's been stowed away. We can't keep that? No.
No, that's
Go look online and get that same information.
Well, you can't keep that.
All right, I'll go online and get it.
dawn. All right.
It's on the
Anything else for the good of the group?
Oh, man.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes,